It is time for episode 2 of season 3 of the Portsmouth Comic Con podcast. On episode 1, I spoke with some of the heroes that work behind the scenes to make this event such a success. And today I am very, very honored to be speaking with a fellow, I'd say Portsmouthian. Is that a word, Andy?
I'll just go with it. Yeah, that
Let's
sounds
go with
good.
it. Andy
Yeah.
Fanton, a wonderful local legend, somebody that has been to Portsmouth Comic Con for a few times over the years, and I'm honored to speak with today. A writer, comic strip artist, fellow nerd and geek. Welcome to the Portsmouth Comic Con podcast, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. For reasons why I will delve into, but you've I've seen you at the Portsmouth Comic Con a few times at different events around Portsmouth. You even created some an artwork commission for my niece for her first ever con, which we are very proud of because she is a fellow Beano fan,
Very
just
good.
like me. But before we get into the deep dive into comics and the Beano and the Dandy and everything in between, what is your origin story, Andy? Where did it all begin for you, sir?
Oh, good Lord. Well, I've always wanted to do this since I was a kid. Like I was an avid reader of comics when I was a kid, including the Beano and the Dandy, but stuff like Whizzer and Chips and Oink and Buster that were
Yes,
all going on during the 80s. You know, we had a plethora of comics back then, which
did.
we sadly don't have anymore. But and it was always just something I always wanted to do from then. I wanted to make comics. I wanted to draw or write comics, and so I sort of followed that really. I did a lot of English. English was my major at in school and college and stuff like that because I liked writing mostly. But I also liked drawing, and so I was doing art and stuff. Um, but that was more on the side kind of thing. I did a bit of art at school, but I think I didn't quite fit into the art teaching kind of thing because I was always wanting to do cartoons and comics instead, kind of thing. And it was slightly frowned upon, it was kind of one of those things you don't want to be doing that. You want to be
Now you
doing,
want to do the Renaissance, the proper stuff.
yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
the real art, not this nonsense. Um, but yeah, and so I just kept doing that. And I think my first major thing was when I sent across the script for an animated pilot idea to Cosgrove 4 Films, the people who did Danger Mouse and Count Duckula. I sent them across the scripts for a series idea I had called The Karate Kid, which was like a Karate Kid parody, but with a carrot in it.
Yes.
um, and they picked that up, and for an option, it was kind of, as long as it was in development, I was getting some money every now and again. So I
Mm.
didn't ship it anywhere else. So that was basically what it was. And it was through that I eventually became online friends with Jamie Smart, who's a comic artist. He's At the time he was working for like Slave Labor Graphics. He was doing a lot of independent comics. But over time he moved into the Dandy and he was doing Desperate Dan for a while. And he let me know in 2010 that they were looking for new because they were planning a relaunch kind of thing, a big revamp of the Dandy because it's perceived as being a bit more old-fashioned than maybe the Beano at the time.
Mm.
So they were like trying to pep it up a bit, and they were looking for new writers and artists. And he said they're looking for new, characters and ideas. And if you've got anything, send it across and see what they say. So I sent across an idea for a strip called George versus Dragon, which was like the St. George and the Dragon fable, but retold as a slapstick kind of Tom and Jerry kind of thing. Where George is always trying to capture the dragon with no success. So and they picked it up, and they picked it up for an initial run of like I think it was like 12 weeks, and then after that they renewed it again, and then it was a really good time, that 2 year period of the Dandy, working on Dandy. They were really open to just new ideas all the time. They just wanted constant new ideas. So I stayed with them drawing and writing for like the whole 2 years that it remained for as a weekly in that period. And then when that closed, I shimmied across to the Beano and picked up various bits and pieces, starting off on gag strips and writing for Little Plum.
Yes.
And then eventually I moved across to the Bash Street Kids, Me the Minx, and Roger the Dodger, which is what I'm doing now. So I took three of
That's
the big ones. Yeah.
the big ones indeed. I mean, yes. I've mentioned this on podcasts in the past. Like the Beano and the Dandy were my stepping stone into the world of comics.
Yeah.
I was an avid reader. I would go to my comic shop once a week or my newsagent and see what sweet or what toy was sellotaped to the front cover. That was always a big deal for me for a kid to finding out what free goodie you got that week. But I was a Beano diehard. Dennis the Menace was my guy.
Yeah.
I always wanted to see what was happening that week. But I did always enjoy going into the middle and finding the Bash Street Kids
Yeah,
and
100%.
finding those characters each week. So many zany characters, probably some that you wouldn't necessarily see in comics today for obvious reasons. But the Beano is still a staple, as it were,
Yeah.
in British comics. It certainly led the way for me to find other comics from that at a time in the late 80s and the early 90s when comic shops really weren't a big thing over here. So
Mm.
for me to get that weekly hit was always a joy. And then they're not so big in America for our American listeners and watchers, but car boot sales for me as a kid were my bread and butter. I would go
Yeah.
off with my pocket money and find the old annuals, or I would find the old individual comics that were all tattered and teared. I've got a few today. This was I've got one from the 50s that's falling apart, but one of these ones from the
Oh,
1974.
lovely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They
I
they
think I might have
still
that one knocking about.
they still smell to me like classic comics. There's a certain scent to paper, but
Yeah,
we've got some Roger the Dodger in
there
there.
he is.
Yeah, there's something about the Beano with black and red. I thought I'd wear some
Yeah,
today,
yeah, yeah.
just to
I'm just,
represent. That's fine. You still got the
yeah.
red on.
I've got some red.
There's a Beano hanging up in the background. But
Yeah, yeah.
for me, yeah, Dennis was my go-to guy. He was naughty. He was a bit of a character, bit of a scamp, but he was a good guy at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's what I loved about those comics, where it was fun. It was continuation. There wasn't always a cliffhanger. When it was a big deal. Stay tuned next week to see what happens with Cuthbert and the rest of the gang. But they were enjoyable. It was fun. It was cheap at the time as well.
Yeah.
Still a reasonable price. But what was it like for you? You know, you've read these comics growing up, and now you're creating for this brand. What was that like for you, Andy?
Oh, like a dream come true, it's like wild, like especially with the Beano, because the Dandy stuff I was doing most of my own creation. So although I was part of the Dandy, and that was weird, but it was my stuff. But when I moved across to the Beano, I found myself writing like the Bash Street Kids and working with David Sutherland, who was the artist since 1962. I think he first started drawing the Bash Street Kids. Sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago now, but for a few years I was working with him, and it was like I read his stuff. He used to be the Dennis the Menace artist in the 80s as well. He was the one who drew Dennis the Menace. So he was like really integral to the Beano. He was like one of the big creators of
Yes.
that era when I was growing up. I'd read his Bash Street Kids and his Dennis the Menace and whatever else he would work on, and to be working alongside him, and I'd occasionally have emails with him when we just be talking to him was like wild.
Yeah,
And he was so nice. He was he was still like, even though he'd been in the industry for so long, he still got such joy out of doing it. He was still like, I can't believe we're doing this. Like for him as well, he's like, I can't believe I get to do this every week. He was like,
we're still getting away with it after all these
yeah.
decades. This is fantastic. But that was the thing. It has been, part of the world of comics and UK press especially. And I can remember as a kid being absolutely flabbergasted when I found out that there was a Dennis the Menace in America as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Completely different companies and sort of thing, but sort of both little scamps. But I think they came out at the same sort of time. But I mean,
about a week of difference there was. I think there was. It was really weird.
Just a crazy coincidence. But I
Yeah.
mean, as a diehard fan, I'm always going to go back to Dennis and the Beano because that's what I know. But it's something for me that I love seeing kids picking up the Beano and reading these old characters that are still around today. What's it like being a part of that world, Andy?
It's great. It's I love it when I go to cons like Portsmouth Comic Con, when I go there and you see such a mixture of people come to your table. It's great to see like the older fans who have got nostalgia and they pick it up and go a bit misty-eyed, and go, oh, it's Dennis, oh, it's Minnie, whatever. You can see them sort of regress right in front of your eyes, kind of thing, as they go back to their childhood. But you also see the kids who are now reading it now and are all excited about. It's got such a lovely mass appeal because it's been around for so long. It's got so many people know it from different points in their life, kind of thing. It's quite an honor and quite a privilege to be part of that huge history that for however long I'll be part of it. I don't know,
Hopefully for many more years to come, Andy. But that's it. But I've been reading some of the new ones with some of the old ones as well. But the passion is still there. That love for storytelling with a little sprinkle of silliness, big sound effects, big motion, big graphic artwork. It's still there. Going back to some stuff, say I've got my pile with the good old Rasher on the front. I would see that in a comic shop and just be, those are my colors. These colors have followed me through my life. The red, yellow, and blue has morphed into Superman over the years. But
yeah, well, yeah.
even just picking this up, and I think for my 10th birthday, I got a subscription, so it would be I wouldn't have to walk to the news agents to get it. I would get the Beano delivered, and I felt like a big shot, Andy. This is the big time for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. The Beano was my go-to. The Dandy was good, as you said. The Wizard and Chips as well, and Beezer. Going from those comics, I can see why later on in life I started reading more comics like Viz. I would find my dad was a big Viz fan, and I would sometimes sneak away and grab some of his copies to read those, and there's bad words in here. I shouldn't be reading it, but it's funny stuff.
Yeah.
So the artwork is not too dissimilar when you go from the Viz to the Beano, but still fantastic comics. Talking back briefly about the Karate Kid.
Yes.
Now, I have seen the pilot. It is on your website, which is fantastic.
It is, yes.
There'll be links to this. Now, talking about links, there is a link also between another guest that has been to Portsmouth Comic Con a few times over the years, and that would be the voice artist, Mark Silk.
Oh yes. He was he was the Karate Kid in the pilot, and the villain, Count Cornelius.
And the villain did a fantastic job. And that's what I loved about Mark. I'm not sure if he's returning next year, but he was always a fantastic guest, impersonating all of these characters that he helped bring to life over years. But it was a fun cartoon. I would have liked to see more of the Karate Kid. It was that style of the time, a bit silly, a bit nostalgic.
Yeah.
Again, great artwork and sound effects, similar to sort of the Ren and Stimpy's and the Nickelodeon cartoons of the time. I would have liked to see more of that. But going back to sort of the Beano and your time at the Dandy, this is something that I've always wanted to know, and now I've got this chance to speak with somebody in the know. As a kid, I always thought the Beano was created in this huge warehouse of madness. With whoopee cushions and custard pies and things happening all over the place. Please tell me the truth. That's how it actually happens, Andy.
Well, it's a lot different nowadays. Like I've still not even been up there to Beano HQ, you know, because it's up in Dundee, so it's quite a while away. You know, I'd have to, carve out a couple of days to go up there, I think. But so a lot of it is over email, obviously nowadays. You know, I just email scripts across, or we scan in artwork and email that across. There's very little, unlike in the olden days where they, physically carry their artwork in there in tubes and unfurl it in front of the editors and kind of. But from what I understand, the old days were quite fun. It was like a bullpen. It was like people playing football, or just
fantastic.
And having a bit of a laugh. And I think it's, it's still operates from a single office, I think, office space kind of thing, where they're all together, as far as I know. But yeah, from my end, it's just in my house. This is the Beano factory for me. It's just my house.
You're still making the magic happen, Andy, which is the important part of it. How do you get into your creative mode, your Zen place where you start to begin creating?
Well, it's just a case of sort of sitting up at the computer and sort of maybe popping on some music just to sort of get me sort of relaxed and thinking. And then it's just, it depends. Sometimes the ideas just pop up when you least expect it. Like trying to actually sit down and go, I'm going to have ideas now is not always the optimum way to do it. It's sort of, sometimes it can seem like I'm doing nothing. I think this is true for a lot of writers and creatives. It can seem like you're not doing anything, like you're just doing something else, but in the background it's like a program on the computer. It's just running in the background, and suddenly it will go ping and throw something forward, and you go, oh, I've got an idea now, and then you just have to write you
write it down. Get it down quickly. Those ideas tend to happen though when you are as far away from a pen or a computer as possible. Normally in the shower, or you're somewhere where you need to concentrate on somebody else's conversation. You think, I need to remember this for later on. This is good stuff. I can't forget about it. But that's what I love about that creative side of things, how a comic goes from an idea to something else, to a comic, to something that is on a shelf still. What's the sort of the turnaround for you? Once you've got an idea, and it's finished, you send it off. Is that going out in a few weeks' time, or is it sort of banked up for future months?
We usually work about 3 months in advance. So I'm currently
Wow.
working on end of January, start of February next year. I'm currently working on the scripts for.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so we usually get it commissioned on a Monday. So I got commissioned yesterday for the scripts that will be in that I'll have to have ready for the following Monday, and then more scripts following Monday. It
Just keep
goes like that.
That's
Yeah,
it. Just keep that work coming in. That's what we
yeah,
want.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
good. But I mean, that's quite difficult because I know that in the past, the Beano and the Dandy, they did cover some sort of a world news and sort of current affairs.
yeah,
Um, Hopefully, in a few months' time, we'll be writing about certain elections that are happening over the upcoming weeks. Who knows?
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I did used to like it when the Beano sort of it addressed world events and it create well, not necessarily celebrities for legal reasons, but you had people that sounded and looked a lot like certain celebrities at the time. The
Yeah,
puns
yeah,
in the Beano and the Dandy were always on point, something that
yeah.
I'm happy to see again. And most recently you did a certain time travel theme story, didn't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. That was last November. I did a Doctor Who based one because it was obviously the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and I sort
Mm.
of pitched it to the editor. It was like, oh, could I do a 4-page Bash Street Kids? Because I've got an idea for a Doctor Who crossover, and he's a Doctor Who fan as well. So he was like, oh
That's
yeah,
it.
go for it. Yeah,
Keep,
And
keep
so
the bosses sweet. We like that.
yeah. So I just did one because there's now the Bash Street Kids cast has grown from the initial kind of 9 or 10 to 15 characters
Mm.
now because they've added some new ones. And I realized 15 characters, we're about to meet the 15th Doctor. I can do each of the kids being a different Doctor kind of thing. So I thought, boom, there's your idea kind of thing. And I was really pleased because I sort of promoted it on social media and stuff. And Russell T Davies, the producer of Doctor Who, picked up on it and shared it on his own Instagram page and was like really excited about it. Oh, I can't believe we're in the Beano. And I was like, oh,
See,
check
that's
that
the
off
thing.
the.
That's it. That's worlds colliding. I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
like that when that also that's happened in real life for you now, but it did happen in the comics every now and again. Sort of certain characters would come over to one, or they would go over to visit the Dandy. There would be these
oh yeah.
mashups that I would love to see. It was
Yeah,
like,
I'm big on all that kind of thing. I've done like a Minnie the Minx where she it was not long after No Way Home came out, Spider-Man No Way Home,
hmm.
and I had the idea of like that bringing together three different eras of Minnie like together, like the original Leo Baxendale design, the Jim Petrie 80s
Oh
Minnie,
yes,
and the modern Minnie. And we did one where they all kind of collided kind of thing, like met each other. And Laura Howell, who draws Minnie currently, she did an amazing job of like emulating the styles of Leo and Jim.
oh
It was amazing. It was amazing stuff. I was like, oh, this is.
did they do the pointing meme? They should have done that.
I think they did kind of. Yeah,
I
yeah, they
think
did do a kind of
I saw
thing. Yeah,
something
yeah,
similar
yeah.
to it. Oh, fantastic! But that's why I love over the years the characters have changed design a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
for me as a kid, I think it was early 90s. Dennis the Menace had a huge makeover and it made it to the
yeah.
daily press. It was in the newspaper. It was a big deal. He had like big, like Nike trainers. It was all a big look. And I was like, I'm not sure if I like change, mum and dad. I don't know what's going on. And he did go back, I think, the following week to the classic shorts catapult in the back pocket. But it shows how comics can get out there in the press and still be a big deal for that. What have been some of your most, not say controversial stories over the years, but the ones that have you've been really excited to see published?
Ooh. Well, the one I just mentioned, the Minnie the Minx crossover, was a really exciting one. And when I got given the job of writing the big overarching story for the 4,000th issue, when they did a 4,000th issue, they did a big long story throughout it, and I was kind of like, I had to plot all that kind of thing and write the opening and closing chapters, and
Oh,
I was like, oh, this is quite an honor, to be issue
yeah.
4,000 like that, all over it. So that was a really exciting one to see go out. But yeah, there's so many. I'm often, like really excited to see things like because we don't get much back and forth between writers and artists as it's being produced kind of thing.
Hmm.
So the first time I'll see the finished thing is when it's in print kind of thing, and I'll go,
Wow.
oh, that looks even better than I imagined kind of thing, and it's
Yes. So
really exciting to see.
sometimes artists and creators can be their own worst critic.
Mm.
Sometimes do you see your work and think, oh, I could have done that differently or in a bit better
Yeah,
way?
sometimes. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I think, or maybe I didn't make this clear enough, or maybe I actually I've thought of a better ending, like in the interim, like when you send it off, it's done, but like, it still kind of
Yeah,
gestates and you think, oh, maybe I should have just done, oh, and it's too late now.
that's it.
You have
It's
to roll
done
with it.
now, and it's
Yeah.
final. That's the thing. You can't edit artwork when it goes out into the comics like this, but it's still, even when I just hold this in my hand, I'm getting distracted. I can easily just switch off and turn to a page and get lost in the artwork with these comics. And I
Yeah.
mean, I've tried to keep these, as you know, as an avid collector, as safe as possible over the years. A lot of them are bagged and boarded, as all good comics could be.
Yeah.
But I was a fan, as I always am, as you can see around me, of collecting. There wasn't much Beano merch back in the day. There was a fair
Hmm.
bit. I've got a few
Yeah.
old bubble bath containers of Dennis and Nasher. But back then it was sort of if you haven't got it, it might be coming out, or you could send off to the Beano competition and try and get a joke issued. But
Yeah.
for me, sadly, I never got that publishing dream, Andy. They never liked my jokes. They never liked my artwork. But I was and still am a Dennis the Menace fan. You
Yeah.
know, I'm for those watching on YouTube, I've got my Dennis the Menace official fan club wallet. The pins are on my pin board, but it's still mint. It's still got
There
my
it is.
original handwriting on the inside. This is what I miss about modern day comics, is the fact that there's not as much involvement with the fans. Editor letters still happen. You can still write off and ask questions. But for me, being a Dennis the Menace fan club holder, I won't show it up because as a child, I did fill up every single piece of information.
Right.
For
Okay.
data protection reasons, all my information is in here. But I am a huge Dennis the Menace and the Beano fan. So to speak with you today is an absolute honor.
They
And
have kind of resurrected the fan club recently.
oh,
They've brought
wonderful.
it back with the wallet as well, and new badges and stuff like that. And it's a sort of a bigger thing now because you don't just get the wallet, you also get the annual and I think the two specials that come out throughout the year
Ah, see,
included within it. So
I've tried getting my niece involved. So look, can I read some of your old comics? And she's, well, they're mine. You can't keep them. You can read them, but they are mine. But I love that. I might have to put it onto my Christmas this year. I mean, this particular episode is going out towards the end of November. So
Mhm.
perfect time for Christmas. So you can get those
Yeah.
Beano annuals. And here's a plug. Don't forget, you can get your tickets for Portsmouth Comic Con 2025 on the 3rd and 4th of May. Now, when I came to see you last year at the con, I love interacting with artists in Artist Alley,
Yeah.
especially. I did have a commission request that I've got here today. I always wanted, as a older reader, I wanted to see Superman in the Beano or the Dandy. We've had some superheroes in there before. We've had the odd mention of Banana Man and different
Yeah, Banana
characters as
Man's
well.
there, yeah.
But I wanted Superman, and you made that dream come true, Andy, with this amazing, amazing piece of artwork.
There he
Now,
is.
if I wanted to see Superman in a comic like the Beano or the Dandy, that is the interpretation. Hands on hips, a very big, big American grin,
Yeah, big
and
grin.
muscles everywhere, and the trunks in classic Beano style. That's come out of the frame just for today. That'll be going back into my artwork cupboard. But what's it like for you when you're at a con and it's pressure to obviously create artwork, but you've also got to be alert to speak with everybody as well. How do you make a fine balance out of that, Andy?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just very. It's always amazing to me the con because it's always so busy. Like you never know because I've been there. Like you were saying, I've been there for quite a few times now, and I always think, have I seen everyone that's going to be interested? You know what I mean? Like, is it a diminishing returns? Like I keep
Hmm.
coming back, kind of thing. But it's never is. It's always just as good as like the first time, kind of thing. And I'm always. It's just great. Yeah, it's great because people commission artwork and that's always fun. You always get some odd thing requests. Can you do? I did a one where I did. I think it was Roger the Dodger as one of the doctors, like Tom Baker
Oh,
Doctor with a big
oh,
scarf
wow.
and Dodger Who, as I called it.
Nice.
um, so you get all those kind of weird little requests, and they're fun. And yeah, just speaking to people is there's always plenty of time to do it. It's I don't ever feel too overwhelmed. Or sometimes you can get a little bit of a queue going on, but everyone seems just to be there to vibe and have a good time. And it's just a nice back and forth. And Yeah, I love it. It's just really nice. It's a little one because where I work on my own here in my, it's nice to get out and actually see the people who read your
Yes,
work, and
and
go
see
get some
real
feedback.
people
Yeah, yeah.
that aren't on a computer screen. It's a nice concept as well.
Yeah. It's really nice for me. And to meet up with other creators, like Laura Howell was there last year, who was the Mini Minx. She's
Mm.
up in Birmingham usually, and I'm down here, so there's not much face to face. So it's always nice to catch up with them as well, and see how they're doing and have a little gossip
It is.
about
It
work,
is nice, and I like that's one of the things why I like hanging around in Artist Alley, because you do get the artists interacting with the people that come to the con, but also you get those moments. I like to take everything in. So I'll have a quick walk around in the morning before the doors open up, just to sort
Mm,
of basically, I like spending as much time at Portsmouth Comic Con as I can. So
yeah.
being given a press pass, I can get in there nice and early and just take it all in and watch this wonderful event come to life from beginning to end. But there's something about Artist Alley where at some cons I've been to, you do feel rushed, and it's not always easy to have a conversation because it's really loud, and you
Yeah.
also don't want to interrupt an artist when they're creating. But there's something so special about Portsmouth Comic Con where Artist Alley is away from the all the sort of more louder events, and you can
Yeah.
have a conversation. It's
Yeah.
almost sort of quite a bit of a chill out to go from, say, cosplay parade to Artist Alley and have a nice walk around and look at artwork.
Yeah. It's a really nice atmosphere out there.
And I think that's when sort of especially the younger generation, it's their first introduction sometimes to how a comic is made, and you
Mm.
can get some fantastic guests talking about how they create their artwork, and how children can turn a hobby like you into a career. It's not
Yeah.
art, is, in the eye of the beholder, they say. And
Yeah.
it hasn't always got to be what the lecturers said. Like you said, when
No.
you were in college, it's what you want to create. And I think that's going to be some fantastic opportunities in the future for younger fans to get involved in that. What's going on in the world of you right now, Andy? What exclusives you might be able to share with our listeners and watchers?
Um, Not a lot. Just finished doing all the work for the scripts for next year's Beano annual. So
Wow.
that's got an even longer lead time because there's like
Yeah.
a lot, it's a big book, it's got a lot of people working on it. And so I've done all the scripts for that, and the Dandy annual I actually did artwork for, doing George versus Dragon for next year's Dandy annual. So they're back for, which is always pleasing. They come back every couple of years or so. They ask for some new strips for the annual, and it's always, like 2010 I created them, and it's always nice to see them come back. And
Mm.
I had like Steve Bright, who's one of the artists. He was messaging me and telling me that he was drawing them for the cover as well, and I was like, "That's
Wow.
wild!" Like,
That's it.
just,
That's the big time. That's like I've made it.
yeah,
I'm on the front. That's another thing that I used to love about some of the older Beanos, not necessarily the sort of the later ones. You would get something on the front, like with this Bash Street Kids one, and then there's something on the back. Even the cover was sort of turned into a comic. But for me, as a kid, the Bash Street Kids was like when I got my annuals at Christmas time. It was normally my granddad's job. If somebody else got me the Beano or the Bash Street Kids annual, they would be in trouble because it was granddad's gift. That's what he would always give
right,
me.
yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of my annuals will never be sold because I'm a collector. But they've got little messages in the front from my granddad saying like "Happy
So
Christmas,
got some.
'92 or '94." But the Bash Street Kids were on a whole different level of naughty, I thought, compared to Dennis the Menace. And I always wanted my classes in school to be like those. Um, Out of the whole Bash Street Kids now, with the old and the new characters, who do you relate to most of all, do you think,
Oh
Andy?
my gosh. I don't know. Um, Maybe I don't know. I've got a soft spot for Wilf
Yeah,
with his
okay.
jumper. It goes
It was nice.
like,
I like that.
yeah, he's kind of a bit reclusive. A bit.
A little bit literally introverted. He's in there.
Yeah.
He's in
He's in
there.
that. He's in there, but he'll muck in and he'll get involved and he'll have a laugh. And that's what I like about the Backstreet Kids. They've all got their own little quirks and
Mm,
foibles, but they all sort of, get along with each other and
they
accept
do.
each other, and they just gel together as a unit and cause misery for teacher. And that's, it's just a nice kind of thing to work with. Yeah. So
But
yeah,
no,
probably will.
well, that's a good one to go for. I mean, but yeah, the scrapes that they all got into, and I did love those characters and insane storylines as well. But again, I was picking up just some annuals earlier on. I went into the loft, went through. I thought I'll just grab this one. Then oh no, let me just grab that one. And I just had vivid memories of me reading Beano for hours and just getting lost in those stories. So for somebody that now works for these companies, I would like to say thank you on behalf of childhood Luke, who has had so many happy memories with this world of characters. So
Yeah,
thank you for that, Andy.
very well.
It's a very special job, and to be able to speak with you today and at the con is an absolute privilege for that. As I said earlier, it was hard to be a collector of Beano merchandise, but something else that I did find in my collection was a very special gift. Going back some years,
Oh, you got a Dennis.
I do,
Okay.
knitted by my wonderful mother many
Oh, that's
many a moon
lovely. Yeah,
ago,
yeah,
and
yeah.
something else that I'm going to have to try and dig out is I had a wonderful neighbor who has sadly passed away now, but she was a puppeteer, and every now and again, as kids, mum and dad's at work, so just knock on next door and they'll let you in, stay there until I get home from work, sort of
Right, right.
situation. And she had a room filled with puppets and puppet arms and legs and heads, which was quite scary at first. But over the years, she gave me an introduction into the world of puppets and Thunderbirds and Labyrinth and all these fantastic TV shows that she worked on and knew people in the business. And one special year, I got a Dennis the Menace marionette, and he's still, his strings are a bit tired, but
Right, yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of those pieces that will always bring me sort of a very special memories for the Beano and for the wonderful Mrs. Rutter that worked on those ones for me. Um, Over the years, before you became a creator for the Beano, did you have a favorite storyline, as it were, one that you weren't involved with?
Oh, right. Oh, I always remember vividly the Nasher is missing storyline from the Beano, where it was one of those like you were talking about before, which had a cliffhanger. It
Mm.
ran for like I can't remember 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. There was just this big, and I remember that was one that got on the news and stuff like that. Nasher has gone missing. Where has he gone? And that's when he came back. That's when Nipper first appeared because it turned out Nasher had gone off and sired some children.
Yes, again, that was a big deal, though. You think, well, another character, like when Dennis got a sister, and sort of
Yeah,
and the introduction of Nipper and Rasher, and it was seeing the comic evolve over the years as it has done now. What
yeah.
would you say is one of the biggest differences that you would see now compared to a comic from, say, the 70s or the 80s?
Well, we've always had to move with the times, I think. I think some people look at it now and, you get all those kind of people who go, oh, it's political correctness or whatever. But I think it's always just being more aware of what time we're in. And we're not in the 70s anymore or the 60s. So you can't have Dennis being thrashed with a slipper you just can't. It's not,
No,
it's not a
oh,
thing
that's
anymore.
that's good. No, and it was thinking back, it wasn't any old slipper. It was a slipper made out of elephant hide,
Yeah, yeah, that
because
kind of thing.
Dennis was so naughty, a regular slipper would just wear away. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
flashback there, Andy. Thank you for that.
yeah. Yeah. So that kind of thing, obviously, we can't really do now. We can't really
No,
be seen condoning that kind of behavior. Although it's a comic, you can say, but it's still, it's not an area we tend to
no.
delve into now. So there's just things like that. People say at the core of it, it's still got that anarchic kind of
Oh,
mischievous, rebellious
yes.
streak running through it. It's still the same. You'll still find Dennis being a menace. You'll still find Minnie being a minx. It's still largely the same. There's just like little tweaks to the formula just to make it go down a bit smoother for today's audience. No, I don't think that's a
No,
bad thing at
it's
all.
not at all. I mean, it's that wonderful word, inclusivity. Much like
Yeah,
Portsmouth Comic Con, I like using that word to how to describe this event, because everything is welcome. Everyone is welcome.
yeah,
The comics are always pushing boundaries when it comes to story writing and character development, and that's what I could go back and read a Beano from the 60s. I could still see elements of Dennis and the Bash Street Kids in today's stories.
yeah,
There's always that, as you said, a little bit naughty, but not
yeah,
incredibly. And there's always a good message in those stories as well, which I
yeah,
am a
yeah.
big fan of. I'm getting all these Beano flashbacks now, which is incredible. I can remember coming home from school, going down to Woolworths with my pocket money and getting Dennis the Menace, the animated cartoon on
Oh yeah, yeah,
VHS,
yeah, yeah.
and the Beano characters animated. And that was like a huge deal, because for years I had this version of Dennis's voice in my head, and I was like, I'm not too sure if I'm gonna know this new voice or if I'm going to like it. Turns out I did like it and it was
Yeah,
fine,
yeah.
but I can remember seeing these characters come to life and thinking, wow, this is a huge moment.
Oh
And
yeah,
again,
yeah.
it's why Dennis and the Beano will always be fantastic members of pulp culture. And I hope they're for years to come. I'm
I remember
hoping.
Sophie Aldred did the voice of Dennis for one of the series, and I met her at a con once and had a nice little
Wow.
chat with her about it. She was like, I was going, "Oh, I used to be such a fan of your Dennis, and now I work for the Beano." And we had a nice little chat about Beano and her time on doing that kind of thing, and it was really nice, you know.
See, that's it. That's that full circle moment, and that's
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
want.
yeah,
That's what I love about seeing sort of guests interact with each other at cons, whether they're walking past each other to go to a panel or they're just having to sit down for a moment, having a coffee. Because we forget that sometimes the artists and creators that go to events, as you said, they don't always. They might be talking to each other online all week or
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
throughout the year, but sometimes events like Portsmouth Comic Con, you get to hang out with these creators and you get to see them in their natural element, as it were, like it's a wildlife documentary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that's what I love about this event as well. It's so open, everyone's so friendly there for it, and hoping next year on the 3rd and 4th of May, two big days in the geek calendar,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
being Star Wars Day and the other one being Free Comic Book Day.
Oh yeah,
I'm
of course,
hoping
yeah.
for lots more panels next year, and to interact with you again. I'm hoping, Andy.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully, yeah.
It's
I'll be there.
it,
I believe I've been
I
invited.
believe so. I've
Yeah.
heard some inklings, but that's it. But that's I love the fact that they are getting people back that have been there for years, but they're getting new talent as well, and people that
Yeah.
necessarily wouldn't know about Portsmouth Comic Con, because it's still relatively a new con,
Yeah.
2018. But the fact that it's coming back each year with more and more events and more guests, and much like the Beano, it is evolving with the times over the years.
Yeah,
What
definitely.
is it that you enjoy so much about Portsmouth Comic Con, Andy?
I like the size of it. I like how, it's big but not too overwhelmingly big like some of the really big cons,
Mm.
some of them you just go in, it's a bit whoa, a bit
Yeah,
much. I mean, I like them as well, but I do like the kind of size of the Portsmouth one. I think it's a nice size for it's big enough to be interesting and diverse and stuff like that, but not too big to be you get lost in a sea of
yeah,
everything else,
and that is it. And I think what's quite so special about that wonderful Portsmouth Guild Hall.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't really understand how big it is inside. It is much like a TARDIS,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which you can see on the Guildhall's elevator on their lift.
Yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
is something on every floor, whether it be the
Yeah.
arcade, the artist's alley, vendors, panels. There's something going on every single level. And yeah, as you said, it's not too overwhelming. And
No.
as I said, I like being there from start to finish, trying to plan out my weekend as finely tuned as possible. There's always something there going on. So yeah, it's
And everyone who runs it is so nice as well. They're so friendly and accommodating. Like I've had my son pop in, and be like my little assistant for a couple of hours on a day before, and they've been very happy for him to do that, kind of thing. And it's been really really nice just to have him
oh, that's good.
experience it as well,
That's
and
it. Was like seeing dad at work, which is always
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he's coming back next year, I will be requesting another commission from him, but also from you. And
Double whammy.
I will be a very harsh critic to see who
Who
does the
does
best
best?
piece. But that's what I love. It is a family event, much like with you bringing
Yeah,
your
yeah,
son
that's
along
another
to
good
it.
thing. Yeah,
And yeah, it's my favorite weekend of the year. I'm a huge believer, big
yeah.
ambassador for this con. So to find out that you're coming back is fantastic news. You've made me more excited for the event. Put it that way. I'm looking forward to that. And Beano annuals and Dandy annuals will be back on my Christmas list this year. Where can people find you online, sir?
There's my website, phantom.co.uk. I'm also on X, Twitter, whatever you call it these days, as at your pal Phantom. That's pretty much it, I think. I've got
And
Instagram, but I don't really use it very much. So
there's so many to keep up with. It's quite
yeah,
tricky.
yeah.
It's a full-time job just posting links up. But
I know,
don't
yeah.
worry, because all your social media websites will be in the link in this podcast, sir. Andy, it has
Thank you.
been an absolute pleasure, as always. I'm so grateful to spend some time speaking with somebody that is working for a massive part of my youth and that is still happening. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.